Hello, Zero Books readers. I'm Douglas Lane, the publisher of Zero Books and the voice behind these videos and the Zero Books podcast. I recently have been given some instructions on how to make these videos just a little bit more accessible, and apparently being less anonymous will help with that. So, this is what I look like, or what I looked like in the year 2000 anyway. And again, my name is Douglas Lane. Anyhow, in the last video we examined just why Noam Chomsky doesn't like Slavoj Žižek, or really any critical theory at all. And I suggested that this question would lead into a second video explaining modernity by examining three Zero Books titles: Ghost of My Life, Militant Modernism, and The Last Night. However, as I worked on this second video, I realized I needed to maybe explain a bit more than I could easily fit into just two. So, welcome to the second part of what is now a three-part series on the problem of modernity. In this video, we'll be taking a look at Mark Fisher's book, Capitalist Realism, at least towards the end we will. But first, we'll return to this conflict between Chomsky and Žižek.
Upon Chomsky's style.
In the last video, we explored how Noam Chomsky and Slavoj Žižek represent two different approaches to politics, and how the differences between them comes down to how they solve certain problems of epistemology, or how we know what the world is, and ontology, or just what that world is. I argued that Chomsky came down on the side of Immanuel Kant, who suggested that all we really know are those things that are within the realm of human cognition, that define human cognition. And Žižek, on the other hand, suggested something stranger than that, as he came down on the side of Hegel. Let me restate that and make it clearer. What I argued before was that Chomsky was some sort of idealist, in so much as he believed that the world as it is in itself was ultimately unknowable, and that Žižek was, well, I didn't say, but what I'll tell you now is that he's a strange sort of Hegelian materialist.
We need the excuse of a fiction to stage what we truly are.
Remember, Chomsky defines the notion of physical as being those things we can know about scientifically, and he defines the non-physical as being those things that we just don't know anything about yet, or very likely that we can never know about. From Chomsky's perspective, the material world that lays outside our knowledge is, paradoxically, non-physical. Žižek, on the other hand, would define the material world differently. He would, first off, not talk about the physical and non-physical, but speaking Hegelese, he would talk about the thing for us and the thing in itself. In his book Less Than Nothing, Žižek describes what I take to be a Chomskyan Kantian understanding of the thing in itself, but he describes it as being Buddhist. Now, whether that claim can be justified or not, it's a helpful starting point. Žižek writes, "What then is the thing in itself, from a dialectical materialist standpoint? The best way to answer this question is, again, to oppose dialectical materialism to Buddhism. In Buddhism, the thing in itself is the void, nothing, and ordinary reality is a play of appearances. The question, ultimately unanswered here, is how we get from nothing to something. How do illusory appearances arise out of the world?" End quote. According to Žižek, the only way that illusions can appear, the only way our incomplete human understanding can appear, is if this realm of what Chomsky would call the non-physical is not simply a void or empty, but rather is somehow more than empty. To shift registers, we might conceive of the difference between Žižek and Chomsky this way. Chomsky would claim that what we think we know about the world is either real or it's not real. We either have good scientific reasons for our beliefs or we do not. From Chomsky's perspective, the world outside of our senses is cut off from us and can't be captured within the realm of science, and hence it's not real. Although this is more of a consequence of his belief than something he would want to affirm.
But it sounds to me here like what you're saying is that the only things that are real, right, are the things that science tells us are real. So it sounds like what you're saying here is that, well, this table isn't real, but maybe, quarks.
Real is an honorific term.
Okay.
You can use it any way you like. I mean, to say, if I say something is true and then I add, well, it's the real truth, I'm not saying there are two different kinds of truth, the truth and the real truth. I'm just emphasizing what I said. And the term real is basically used honorifically. So yeah, you can use it honorifically in various ways. If we're trying to find out the way the world works and to really understand it in the manner of the sciences, we very quickly give up common sense notions. If we're carrying out folk science, less reflectively, probably using different cognitive faculties, we also give up common sense notions, but in different ways.
Well, you can say a lot of, claims about something being honorific, like real being honorific. Alan Gibbard, for example, has argued that terms like rational are honorific, or moral are honorific.
Well, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think real is quite different.
But what's the difference in these cases, then?
Because I think rationality is something that we can understand, and morality is something real, and it's part of us, and we can try to figure out what it is.
Hey, buddy. You gonna pay for that or what?
Well, Žižek would say that what we know about the world always contains both what is real, as in coherent, sensible, justified, and what is unreal, as in strange, unjustified, contradictory. And this is why Žižek's politics don't operate on the level of bare facts. Now, this difference is politically significant. To clarify, let's consider Mark Fisher's book, Capitalist Realism. In it, the proposition is put forward that the realism Fisher describes is unjustified. It's incoherent. It's even toxic. Capitalist realism keeps us from completing the modernist project. And as long as we're trapped within capitalist realism, we won't progress, and we won't get better. According to Fisher, the Anglophone world at least is so mired down in this stagnant capitalist realism that we are even frozen in terms of art and pop art.
The way to establish a lot of what I'm saying, I think, is a simple kind of time travel experiment, which is if you imagine beaming back anything, any music produced in the 21st century into 1994. I picked 1994 deliberately because it's 20 years ago, and it's hard for some of us to accept that 1994 is 20 years ago. But if beaming it back to 1994, what would happen if people heard that music in 1994? Would they go, my God, this is inexplicable, I've never heard anything like this. This isn't even music. I don't think anyone's going to do that.
However, if we're going to take this difference between Chomsky and Žižek seriously, we have to ask, is there something real in capitalist realism? Can something we think is not real rely on rational, justified, coherent ideas and practices? And do our rational, justified, coherent ideas ultimately rely on an unreal or abstract specter? Žižek says the answers to these questions is yes, And he even goes so far as to suggest that this relationship between the real and the unreal, the way the unreal structures and determines the real, and the way encounters with the real create unreal specters, can be reasoned out. We can know about this relationship. We can master this interaction between the real and the unreal. And what I want to suggest here at the end is that it's for this reason that Žižek, and not Chomsky, provides a better understanding through which we might revive the Enlightenment project. This is Žižek, who might allow us to re-embrace and act on the notions of progress and change that Fisher thought had gone missing and that he so sorely missed. Are you feeling a little lost? Does it still seem a little unclear? You might pick up Frank Smecker's Night of the World for help. Also, you can subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one and for our weekly podcast called Zero Squared. And if you're not a patron of our Insider podcast called Inside Zero Books, you should be. Find the link to our Patreon page and give us money. So, did I plug everything? Is there anything I forgot?